Hi everyone. Today we're going to start learning about how animals and plants respond to their environment. If you need to get a hold of me or you need some help, you can see my email address is on the screen, rcrawford@jcpsmail.org. If you don't have your materials, if you'll please go ahead and pause the video, you'll need a pencil, your science notebook, and some color pencils. Let's go ahead and do a quick review. So if you would, think back and see if you can name the flower part that develops into a fruit. So we had those parts of a flower, and I want you to think about which one of those became swelled up and became a fruit. It developed into a fruit. Hopefully you were able to remember that that was the ovary. That was that protective chamber. My second question is, name the flower parts that develop into seeds. So these were inside of the ovary, and this contained the female reproductive cells. We had the pollen tube grow to these to fertilize the eggs that were inside of them. The flower part that became the seeds, of course, is the ovules. So here's our third question. How do fruits help spread seeds throughout the plant's environment? So how are fruits an adaptation that helps spread seeds? And if you remember, we talked about animals eat fruit and the seeds pass right through the digestive system and leave as waste, hopefully in a new location. And so the plant is effectively able to spread its seeds throughout the environment. So our objectives for today. Our first objective will be to explain what the life process sensitivity is. What is the life process sensitivity? Our second objective will be give some examples of reasons animals must be able to respond to their environment. So why is it important? So let's start by looking at those life processes. The life processes, we said, are essential activities carried out by all living things. I hope that you can remember that silly way that I provided you with last time to remember what the life processes are. If you haven't quite remembered her yet, remember Mrs. Green. Mrs. Green gives you the first letter of the life processes. And we can see here from our objectives that we're going to be looking at sensitivity. We looked at reproduction in plants last time. We're going to be looking, though, at this life process sensitivity. And bear in mind, something is not alive. An organism is not alive if it doesn't do everything on this list. It can't just do 6 of them. It has to do all 7. So sensitivity. So sensitivity is going to be the ability of an organism to detect and respond to changes in its environment. So the ability of an organism to detect and respond to changes in their environment. So here we have some cattle and a tree, and we can see that this is in midday and the sun must be really hot here. And we can see that these animals, these cattle, have detected a change in their environment. And they're actually trying to stay in the shade. So I bet these cattle don't always stay here. They're just responding to their environment. So they detected that it was hot, and then they have responded by moving into the shade. So that's all sensitivity is, the ability of an organism to detect and respond to changes in its environment. It's important to remember that environments, although we don't always think about it like this, environments are constantly changing. They're changing temperature, as is shown in this picture. There is food that may be nearby us at some times, but food may not be abundant at other times. It may be scarce. Water, things like water, storms pass through, predators. All of these things represent changes in the environment. And the reality is all living things, if they don't have sensitivity, if they're not able to detect and respond to these changes, they're not likely to survive. All plants and animals got to be able to react to these changes if they want to survive. So, in short, responding to your environment is about survival. So here, this picture is a pretty good example of 2 creatures, 2 organisms at least, that are responding to their environment. Here we have a gazelle, and here we have a cheetah. Here's our prey, and here's our predator. So, you know, predators and prey are constantly at war and responding to each other. If you're a gazelle and you don't respond to the cheetah, you're going to be eaten. You are not going to survive. If you're the cheetah and you don't respond to the gazelle, then you're going to starve to death. You're not going to be collecting food. So the predators hunt and the prey run and hide and or fight back. So this is a very typical response. It's a very common way that you might see some organisms responding to their environment. As a reminder, responding to your environment is all about survival. So here we have in this picture, still looking at responses to the environment. Here we have this line of wildebeest. So this is on the African savanna. And remember, a savanna is just a grassland that has some scattered trees on it. And here we have this long line of wildebeest. It look like they're going somewhere, and in fact they are. So each season, and this is each year during what we call the dry season, which is when we don't get much rain on the savanna, the wildebeest actually follow the rains. So they go to parts of the grassland where there is still grass for them to eat. So this migration is a good example of the wildebeest responding to their environment. They have to go where the food is. So this mass migration, which is millions and millions of not only wildebeest, but also of things like zebras and other types of gazelles, they must migrate to find food. Good example of responding to their environment. Interestingly, when the prey animals move, when they migrate, you'll often see some of the predators that will move with them. They will follow the herds, and all following the rain. So this is a pretty good example of a way that you may have organisms responding to their environment. Here we have a picture of, these are flamingos, and this is a very shallow lake that they're in here. This is a good example of the flamingos responding to their environment. So most of you have seen pictures like this where you have birds that will congregate in these large groups. It usually happens once a year, sometimes more frequently. But these large groups are usually so that these birds can come together and mate. Birds are, generally speaking, solitary animals. They're pretty free. But, in this example, we have these millions of flamingos. Many of them have flown thousands of miles so that they can gather at this one lake. This one lake provides some resources that, plenty of food, plenty of good nesting sites, but they all gather together so that they can find a mate. This is a really good example of an organism responding to its environment. They're all going to be going there together. If you don't go to this lake where the other flamingos are, then you are not likely to find a mate. Some of the response to environment can be things that are quite terrible. We could have flooding, we could have earthquakes or wildfires. So we can see here that these two deer are absolutely responding to their environment. You can see that they've tried to escape the flames. No different than trying to evade a predator, escape from a predator. Lots of different things that critters and these organisms have to respond to in their environment. So I'm going to need you to stop the video, and we don't have a lot to put in our notes today, but I do want you to copy these short notes into your science notebook exactly. If it's underlined, I want you to underline it, and please don't skip words. I've already tried to cut back on these as much as I can. So stop the video. Once you're done, I want you to go ahead and start the video again. I have another assignment for you. Okay. So today, I'm going to ask you to read an article. We're going to be looking at some ways that plants respond to their environment. So the article is going to be posted. There will be a link to it underneath the video, today's video link. And so if you click on that, that will open the article up. Just as you're reading, make sure you pay attention to some text features, things like pictures, the headings for each section, any vocabulary words. They may be highlighted or bolded. But I want you to really pay attention to the things that they are trying to make stand out. Once you finish your reading, now if you're on Google Classroom, once you finish the reading, I want you to create a short video. We're going to use Flipgrid. This is something that we've used early in the year. We haven't used it in a little while, but I want you to create a short video on Flipgrid explaining 3 ways that plants respond to their environment. So while you're doing the reading, you may want to jot some notes down to help you as you talk. You don't need to create a script. You don't need to write everything down that from the article, just enough to make you feel comfortable talking about ways that plants respond to their environment. Realize that I'm looking for at least 3 different ways. And so to get to our Flipgrid, you're going to find another link. So underneath our link for our video today and the link to the article, you'll find a link that will take you to the Flipgrid. Okay, and there's all kinds of things you can do with your video, but I'll let you rediscover that on your own. Now, let's suppose that you do not have Google Classroom, you don't have internet, and you've been picking up a USB, and this is only for those people. If you're on USB, you're going to find the article directly on that USB drive. You'll just need to click on the file to open it up. And then I want you to make 3 color drawings on paper that show the 3 ways or 3 or more ways that plants respond to their environment. Remember, this is only for the people who don't have Google Classroom and are picking up a USB drive from school each week. Now, I will end up asking you to send a text that shows me, a text or an email that shows me your work on these. And so that's how we're going to earn our grades this week. There's not going to be a weekly quiz. So reading the article and making the Flipgrid video for most of you, but a few of you will be making this 3-panel drawing. Guys, that's really it for today. So if you would, stay curious, and I'll see you next time.